All right. So next we have the AP college basketball poll just came out today, not long ago, and our new number one team is the Kansas Jayhawks, and right behind them Duke, Tennessee, Gonzaga, and Michigan. So we'll start with Zai. Any thoughts on that poll? Where your Wolverines are?
Well, I think Michigan's, number five is kind of disrespectful because you got Gonzaga, Tennessee, Duke with all losses. It's not like Michigan's played a fluke schedule. They beat some good teams. They played on the road. If you want to argue Kansas should be number one over them, flip a coin. I don't think that matters. But I look at Michigan and Virginia. I think they're too low. Like I think that they should be in front of Duke, Tennessee, and Gonzaga. Yeah, Duke's got a lot of talent, but they lost. Tennessee has a loss. Gonzaga has a loss. So I just think that you're 10 games in if you're 10 and 0. Even Nevada, who made a deep run, they're 10 and 0. So, but you look at it really, kind of something that catches my eye. You go down the list. I think Texas Tech is at 11. That's way too low for them. They just played Purdue pretty tough last night. Carson Edwards was going off, and they were able to hold off that and get a win. And then you look at a surprise team like Furman, 10 and 0, and I think they've caught a couple of teams off, by surprise and pulled a couple upsets. So, yeah, I think the top five, top six. You could almost say like the top. Looks like the top 7 or 8 is pretty loaded this year, and but a lot of it right now is the eye test. Like people are going to think Duke's the best team because everybody's going to love watching them. Kansas is always good. So, yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that Michigan doesn't get the respect, but really that's the surprise teams like Furman, and then I think Texas Tech is a team that people are going to start to learn a lot about. They're going to be a team that competes with Kansas in the Big 12.
Look, I'm perfectly fine with Michigan being at 5, and here's why. You have Gonzaga, Tennessee at 3, Duke at 2, Kansas at 1, as Jake said. Now, I understand what you said, Zai. Tennessee has a loss, Gonzaga has a loss, but let's look at these losses, okay? Gonzaga just lost last night, Tennessee. But Tennessee, they had a very tough game. They lost to Kansas, number one team in the country. Okay, and Michigan, their win against Villanova, we all thought Villanova was number one seed, potentially going to go in the NCAA tourney, make a run for the trophy again. But I'm looking down the list, I find them at 17, 8-2. Yeah, they're very respectable, but I don't think they're quite there. With a couple of their unexpected players going to the draft, they're not as the high-powered Villanova Wildcats that we're used to. So Michigan's sitting at 5, 10-0, but hey, it's early December. Does the poll really matter? No. It's not like football. You control your own destiny. We haven't even really got to conference play. Each team's only played 1 or 2 games, so we'll know each team's MO once we get to through January and February, and that's when it matters the most. No one's going to look back and care about the December poll.
I think go ahead,
Go ahead,
Zach.
Jake. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, personally, with Michigan, their MO as of the last 5 years has been to fly under the radar. You look, the last time Michigan was number one in 2013, they lost, and then they went to the national championship game as a 4 seed. Last year, I believe Michigan was a 3 seed, I think, a 3 seed. Not number 2, not a number 1 like Michigan State or Kansas or North Carolina, and they made it to the national championship game. I think, I'm not saying, you should disrespect Michigan, but it's been Michigan's MO under John Beilein to fly under the radar, to not be a big shot team like Duke or Kansas, to just play their game, and if people don't see it, they'll show you why they deserve their respect. So I think Michigan, 5 is a good spot for them, but I think if eventually, because in December they play 3 terrible teams they should beat by a combined 90 points. And, once January rolls around and they play some tough games like at Indiana or they play Penn State or Nebraska, that'll eventually tell us, where Michigan's at in the conference and where they are in the country.
Just look at it. North Carolina, 12th team in the country. Michigan beat by 15 points or more. roll Villanova, 17th team in the country. And then Villanova's 2 losses are to Michigan, who's undefeated, and Furman, who's in the top 25. So I think people kind of jumped off the Villanova bandwagon too fast. Like, they have 2 really good losses. So I just think about it like, but I agree. The poll doesn't really matter. Uh, I think Michigan's going to be they're going to be a top 2 team in the Big Ten. Probably looking at them and Sparty to battle it out. Maybe throw in Wisconsin. Ohio State's off to a good start, but I think overall there's I like the mix of the 25 right now. I think you got a lot of the top 5 conference teams in there, the powerhouses, but then you mix in like Buffalo, Furman, Houston. You got some teams in there that are going to make some noise and make it really interesting for March Madness. I mean, you got to look at Buffalo's schedule. I mean, they might run the table. And if they can run the table, what seed do they really deserve? And that's going to be a really interesting topic. And they made some noise last year, so it's not like they're a fluke. Like, we know they're pretty good. They got a lot of scorers, a lot of guards, defend hard. So it's going to be really interesting this year, like what seeds and, when teams start to have success and they have another good year, where do you put them? It's going to be really fun to watch how it plays out and where teams end up.
Agreed, especially with Buffalo. They're in I believe they're in the MAC. And, the MAC is not necessarily known for being a big basketball conference or, if anything, I don't really know what they're known for. But Buffalo, being respectable, like you said, Zai, they beat Arizona by 20 points in the tournament last year. No one saw them coming, and eventually, you got to give a team its respect, kind of like Wichita State. We never saw them coming a few years ago. Then all of a sudden, here they were. Beating Kentucky, being in the Final Four as an 8 seed. They're finally in the top 25. In fact, they got to the top 5 a couple times. So you give these teams that are, like Michigan, flying under the radar, but they're flying really under the radar. You give them their chance to shine, and they're either going to show you or they're not going to show up at all. And I think Buffalo's done a good job so far.
And a team like Furman, how much do we really know about Furman? I'm looking through their schedule, and yes, they're 10-0. Yes, they beat Villanova, but going back to my point, how good is Villanova? Okay, that's the reason why Furman is ranked. They're 23rd because they had that marquee win against Villanova. But I'm looking at the other teams that they played. Bob Jones University, never heard in my life. Okay, they beat Loyola, Illinois, not Loyola Chicago. Who knows? They beat them by 2 points there. Okay, they beat Gardner-Webb, North Greenville. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on Furman. Do we see him making a deep run into the NCAA tourney? Absolutely not, okay? And they're a team that they have to win their conference tournament to get to the March Madness, because I think they'll falter off, and then we'll realize that Villanova had a bad loss. But let's pump the brakes a little bit on Furman when they're playing a team like Bob Jones University.
I got to give Furman some credit to beat Villanova at Villanova, especially after Villanova lost 73-46 to Michigan. Villanova had to have come out, played hard. I mean, that's tough to do. And then you look at a Villanova, yeah, you say they're not very good, but they went and beat Oklahoma State by 19 points, and then they go and beat Florida State. And Florida State's a pretty good team. I just think, like I said, I think people jumped off the Jay Wright and Villanova bandwagon. They're going to be a tough team in the tournament. Are they national championship good right now? No, I wouldn't pick them to win the national championship, but would it be a surprise if they're in the Sweet 16 competing? Absolutely not. So, yeah, is Furman a team that's going to win the national championship? Probably not, but what I'm saying is that it's not as bad as a loss as people are like, oh, my word, Villanova lost to Furman.
Don't get me wrong, going back to what I said earlier, Villanova is a very good team. They're just not what we expect. They're not going to be a number 1 seed. They might be a number 3 or 4 seed this year, and they can make a deep run. All I'm saying is that Michigan didn't beat the Villanova old the last couple of years. They beat a lesser opponent of Villanova, who's, don't get me wrong, a very respectable team. They had a couple players that went to the draft that was unexpected last year due to how they beat Michigan and a couple of their performances in the NCAA tournament last year. So going back to the ultimate question, Michigan at 5, I think is a good spot. And hey, if they keep winning, keep knocking down teams like they're going to play Wisconsin, Michigan State, who's very formidable opponents, they're going to have their chance to be number 1. As long as teams like Kansas, gets knocked off. Duke's playing the ACC. They're going to play Virginia, Syracuse, so they're going to play some extremely tough teams. And I said from the very beginning of the year that Duke's going to have 3 or 4 losses. I did not see them run the table because experience matters. And when you have 3 or 4 freshmen with that much of a load on their shoulders, they're going to have a couple tough games, as we've seen against Gonzaga. Zion, he played like a freshman, and it's going to happen a couple times going on the road in those hectic environments at like Virginia Tech and those type of games that everyone's going to get Kansas's best shot, Duke's best shot. So these teams are going to have 3 or 4 losses. So if Michigan can stay in that winning column, they're going to get the number 1 seed. But like I said before, does a poll really matter in December? No. So
I'm just going to leave you with this. Michigan's 10-0. They beat Northwestern by 2 on the road. The next closest game was South Carolina, 11-point win. Every other game's been over 15 points. That includes North Carolina, Villanova, and Purdue. They deserve to be at least number 2 in the country.
I'm going to call an upset alert here right now. I think Michigan's going to lose at Illinois.
Really?
They've struggled there for the longest time. Of course, with the Trey Burke team that went to the title, they beat Illinois by 35. But other than that, they've only beat them by 10. They've lost by 2. They've lost by 10 in overtime. I think Michigan will finally be brought down to earth on January 10th when they go to Champaign. It's always a tough environment to play there. I know Illinois is 3-7, but they've played a tough schedule so far. And of course, it's January. If they lose at Illinois, they lose at Illinois. Michigan's still going to be a team, and we're going to be competing in the NCAA tournament in our brackets. And, of course, we love to watch the AP poll in the top 25. But like Justin said, a December 10th AP poll doesn't really have a major effect on the NCAA tournament or the major outlook on who's a good team or who's a relevant tournament team as of right now. But honestly, look for Michigan to struggle with the Illini there on the 10th. I'm going to call that right now.
So, Zai, let me ask you this. Who do you think Michigan should be over then? Who's in front of them?
Everybody but Kansas.
Ooh. So you think they're a better team than Duke, Tennessee, and Gonzaga?
Yes.
All right, well, we're just going to see how the future unfolds.
We'll see.
I personally don't think that they don't deserve to be over Duke right now. They don't deserve to be over Tennessee with their performance. They had a tough loss against Kansas, who's the number 1 team in the country, and they just took off Gonzaga, and then Gonzaga beat Duke, which everyone thinks is the best team in the country.
So Michigan's getting punished because these teams are losing to tough teams, why Michigan's rolling tough teams by 15?
I don't think they're getting punished. I don't think anyone should feel punished being number 5 in the country. Top 5 team in the country, that's a great achievement.
With Duke, it's tough. I mean,
and what kind of trophy are you winning with the poll? You're not winning anything. Like I say, it doesn't really matter. All it matters is your ego. Hey, I'm number 1. I'm number 2. But Michigan's sitting at number 5.
It's just time for John Beilein and Michigan basketball to earn their respect.
I feel like everyone has their respect.
They have mine. It took a while, but they have it.
Michigan has taken over this prestige that they're the best team in the state. They've grabbed the reins, grabbed the horns from Michigan State. We all feel like Beilein is the better coach now than Tom Izzo. So I feel like they're getting the respect where respect is due.
We'll see. They'll be up to number 1 soon enough. They'll take care of business.
All right. What do you want to put on it?
It doesn't matter. I'm calling it right now. Michigan will be Big Ten regular season and conference tourney champs.
Woo! Siren. Honestly, I can see it happening. I really could. I know it's early, but I can see them winning the conference. Again, Michigan State, Wisconsin, a team we didn't mention, Indiana. It's going to be a bloodbath in the Big Ten this year. All right, that wraps up our segment on the AP poll, and next we're going to talk about the college football bowl matchups.